The ancient derelict ship drifted through the void like a silent tomb, its hull scarred by eons of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. Alex Reed watched the massive structure rotate slowly on his viewscreen, its alien architecture defying every known principle of galactic shipbuilding. The vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, yet sensors detected no life signs. No energy signatures, nothing but cold metal and whatever secrets lay buried within its darkened corridors. Emma. Walsh pressed her face against the observation window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she studied the mysterious craft. Every species in the galaxy built ships according to their biological needs and cultural preferences, but this vessel belonged to none of them. Its design suggested a race that thought in dimensions humans could barely comprehend, with corridors that twisted through impossible angles and chambers that seemed to exist in spaces too small to contain them. "The Galactic Council will want immediate notification," said Tom Bradley from his engineering station. His fingers hovered over the communications array, ready to transmit their discovery to the 12 ruling species that govern civilized space. Standard protocol demanded that all archaeological finds be reported within 6 hours of discovery, particularly anything that might contain advanced technology or historical significance. Alex studied the readings streaming across his console. The ship predated every known civilization by at least 50,000 years, making it older than the Altarian energy monopolies, the Morgani trading networks, even the legendary Kepler war fleets that had conquered half the galaxy through pure military might. Whatever race had built this vessel had vanished long before any current species had achieved spaceflight, leaving behind only this single monument to their existence. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Altarian monitoring station," reported Communications Officer David Park. The blue-skinned Altarians maintained observation posts throughout the Outer Rim territories, ostensibly to assist newer species like humanity, but primarily to ensure that nothing valuable escaped their attention. They viewed humans as barely competent children, useful only for menial survey work in regions too dangerous or unprofitable for more advanced species to explore. The transmission crackled with typical Altarian condescension. "Human vessel endurance. You will maintain current position until our archaeological team arrives. Do not attempt to board the derelict. Your species lacks the technical sophistication to properly analyze such discoveries without causing irreparable damage to potentially valuable artifacts." Emma's hands clenched into fists at the familiar dismissal. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 15 years ago, and in that time they had been relegated to the most basic tasks. While other species commanded vast interstellar empires and wielded technologies that bordered on miraculous, humans were permitted only simple cargo runs and planetary surveys in the galaxy's least desirable regions. Alex made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of acknowledging the Altarian transmission, he switched off the communications array and turned to his crew. "We're going aboard. Full environmental suits, standard archaeological protocols. Tom, I want you to scan for any active systems. Emma, document everything you see. David, monitor for incoming ships." The docking procedure took 3 hours of careful maneuvering. The derelict's docking ports were unlike anything in their technical manuals, requiring improvised solutions and creative problem-solving that other species might have spent months analyzing. Humans simply adapted, using cutting tools to create their own access points when the alien mechanisms refused to respond to conventional approaches. The ship's interior defied physics as much as its exterior had defied aesthetics. Corridors branched in directions that hurt to contemplate, leading to chambers that seemed larger inside than their external dimensions could accommodate. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically throughout the vessel, powered by some unknown energy source that had operated continuously for millennia without any apparent fuel supply or maintenance. Emma documented everything with scientific precision, but even her trained mind struggled to comprehend the architecture surrounding them. Walls curved through angles that geometry claimed were impossible, while floors and ceilings shifted positions depending on the observer's perspective. The builders of this ship had clearly possessed an understanding of space and time that surpassed anything the current galactic civilizations had achieved. The central chamber contained the discovery that would reshape the galaxy. A crystalline device the size of a human torso sat suspended in the center of the room, surrounded by intricate machinery that hummed with barely contained power. Symbols covered every surface, written in a script that predated all known languages, yet somehow seemed familiar to human eyes. As if their minds were naturally attuned to decipher its meaning, Tom's scanners detected energy patterns unlike anything in their databases. The device wasn't just storing power. It was manipulating the fundamental forces that held matter together, reorganizing atomic structures according to principles that shouldn't exist. When Emma accidentally brushed against one of the control surfaces, the machine responded with a gentle pulse of light that spread throughout the chamber. The transformation was instantaneous and impossible. A section of the chamber's metal wall rippled like liquid, its molecular structure shifting and reforming until it became a transparent window looking out into space. Another pulse caused a piece of debris on the floor to reshape itself into a perfect geometric sculpture, its atomic composition altered from simple iron into a complex crystalline matrix that sparkled with internal light. "We need to get this back to Earth," Alex whispered, understanding instinctively that they had found something beyond the comprehension of the galaxy's ruling species. While the Altarians would spend decades studying the theoretical implications, and the Morgani would calculate its economic potential, humans would learn by doing, experimenting and adapting until they unlocked the device's secrets through pure determination and ingenuity. The journey home took 6 weeks, but they weren't alone. Altarian ships shadowed them at maximum sensor range, no doubt reporting their every movement to the Galactic Council. The 12 ruling species would demand access to whatever humanity had discovered, claiming superior wisdom and technical expertise to properly analyze such an important find. They would cite humanity's junior status in the galactic community, their lack of advanced scientific institutions, their tendency toward reckless experimentation over careful theoretical analysis. They would discover too late that humanity's reckless experimentation was exactly what the ancient technology had been waiting for. While other species debated and theorized, humans would act, and in acting, they would unlock power that would reshape the galaxy forever. The underestimated species was about to become the most dangerous force in known space. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in a research facility that didn't exist on any official records, Emma Walsh watched in fascination as the ancient crystalline device responded to human neural patterns with an eagerness that bordered on enthusiasm. 3 months of intensive study had revealed the impossible truth. This technology, created by a civilization that had vanished before Earth's sun was born, had been designed specifically for minds like theirs. The breakthrough had come during the second week of experimentation, when Tom Bradley, frustrated by conventional analysis methods, had simply placed his hands on the device's surface and concentrated on what he wanted it to do. The machine had responded instantly, reorganizing a sample of lunar rock into a complex mechanical component with microscopic precision. Other species might have spent years developing theoretical frameworks to explain the phenomenon, but humans had immediately begun practical applications. Admiral Catherine Stone observed the latest test from behind reinforced observation windows, her weathered face betraying none of the excitement that burned in her chest. The device had just transformed a cubic meter of ordinary steel into a substance that was simultaneously lighter than aluminum and stronger than diamond, its molecular structure arranged in patterns that shouldn't have been physically possible. More importantly, the transformation had taken less than 30 seconds and required no external energy source. "How many more of these facilities are operational?" she asked Dr. Walsh, though she already knew the answer. Hidden research stations now existed throughout human space, each one staffed by Earth's most brilliant scientists and engineers, all working to reverse engineer the alien technology before the Galactic Council discovered what they were doing. 17 fully operational sites, with 6 more coming online within the month, Emma replied, her attention still focused on the readings streaming across her workstation. The technology scales perfectly. We can transform anything from individual molecules to massive structures, and the devices seem to learn from each interaction, becoming more efficient with every use. The implications were staggering. While the Altarians maintained their energy monopolies through careful hoarding of advanced power generation techniques, humans were developing technology that could create energy from nothing more than reorganized matter. While the Morgani controlled galactic trade through their mathematical precision in calculating shipping routes and resource allocation, humans were learning to create any resource they needed from common elements found on any planetary body. Catherine studied the reports flowing in from research teams across human space. The ancient technology wasn't just about matter manipulation. It included vast databases of information about galactic history, star charts showing regions of space that no current civilization had ever explored, and most importantly, records of dozens of species that had been consumed by the endless cycles of warfare that plagued the galaxy every few thousand years. "Ma'am, we're receiving urgent communications from President Santos," reported Major Richard Chun from the facility's communication center. "The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. Apparently, several systems in the Outer Rim have declared independence from Altarian control, and the Kepler Federation is mobilizing their war fleets in response." Catherine wasn't surprised. Intelligence reports had been suggesting growing tensions throughout the galaxy for months. The Altarians' energy monopolies were becoming increasingly unpopular as younger species developed alternative technologies. The Morgani trading empire faced economic collapse as several major shipping routes became contested territories. The Kepler Federation's warrior culture demanded constant expansion, but they were running out of systems weak enough to conquer easily. "What's our current production capacity?" she asked Tom, who had been overseeing the construction of humanity's new fleet. The ships being built in hidden shipyards throughout human space bore little resemblance to conventional vessel designs. Using the ancient technology, they had developed craft that could phase between dimensions, making them virtually undetectable to conventional sensors, while allowing them to appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours rather than months. "We have 37 phase-capable vessels operational, with 12 more completing final testing this week," Tom reported. "Each ship can carry a full battalion of Marines, and their weapon systems can disable enemy vessels without causing permanent damage. More importantly, we've confirmed that the technology responds better to human neural patterns than to any other known species." That final point was perhaps the most crucial discovery. Initial tests with volunteer subjects from other species had shown that while they could operate the ancient devices, the technology was sluggish and unpredictable in their hands. Humans, however, could interface with the machines as if they had been designed specifically for their use, suggesting an evolutionary connection that defied explanation. Emma had theorized that the extinct civilization possessed brain structures remarkably similar to human neural networks, but Catherine suspected the truth was more complex. Perhaps evolution naturally selected for similar problem-solving approaches across the galaxy, or perhaps consciousness itself followed predictable patterns that transcended individual species. Whatever the explanation, it gave humanity an advantage that no other race could match. The facility's alarm system suddenly activated, bathing the research areas in pulsing red light. "Admiral, we're detecting Altarian scout ships approaching our outer sensor perimeter," reported Major Chun. "They're conducting what appears to be a systematic search of this entire region of space." Catherine felt no concern. The research facility existed in a pocket dimension created by the ancient technology, technically occupying the same spatial coordinates as a standard lunar mining operation while remaining completely invisible to conventional sensors. The Altarians could search for years without finding any trace of humanity's secret development program. "Ma'am, President Santos is requesting immediate consultation," Chun continued. "Apparently, the Kepler Federation has issued an ultimatum to the rebellious systems. They have 48 hours to surrender or face total military occupation. The Altarians are supporting the Kepler position." And the Morgani are already positioning their fleets to profit from the coming conflict. Catherine nodded grimly. The galaxy was about to tear itself apart in another devastating war, just as it had done countless times before. Billions would die, entire civilizations would be reduced to radioactive rubble, and the survivors would rebuild only to repeat the cycle in a few thousand years. Unless someone intervened with sufficient force to end the pattern permanently. Begin. Implementation of Project Unity, she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. All research teams are to transfer their work to operational status immediately. I want every phase-capable vessel ready for deployment within 72 hours. Emma looked up from her workstation, understanding the implications immediately. Admiral, are we really going to challenge the entire Galactic Council? Catherine smiled with the confidence of someone who held cards that no one else knew existed. We're not going to challenge them, Doctor. We're going to save them from themselves, whether they want our help or not. The galaxy has spent too long destroying itself through endless warfare. It's time for a species that understands cooperation and long-term thinking to take control. The transformation of human space continued at an unprecedented pace, hidden from the galaxy's attention by technology that bent the very fabric of reality to humanity's will. While other species prepared for war using weapons and strategies developed over millennia, humans were about to deploy capabilities that would make such preparations utterly irrelevant. The Kepler Federation's most secure military installation floated in the void like a steel fortress, its massive bulk bristling with weapons that could reduce entire fleets to scattered atoms. Lisa Chin watched the structure through her ship's enhanced sensors, noting the patrol patterns of the Guardian vessels and the electromagnetic signatures of the defensive systems that had protected this base for over 2 centuries. Her vessel, the Phantom, existed partially outside normal spacetime, phased between dimensions in a way that made it invisible to every detection method the galaxy's military forces had developed. The stealth technology was just one of many breakthroughs that human scientists had achieved by studying the ancient crystalline devices, but it was perhaps the most practically useful for reconnaissance missions like this one. Commander, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout this sector, reported her tactical officer Michael Torres. His instruments showed the deployment of Kepler war fleets on a scale not seen since their conquest of the Rigel systems 300 years ago. Hundreds of vessels were taking positions along the borders of the rebellious Outer Rim territories, their crews preparing for the kind of total warfare that had made the Kepler Federation the galaxy's most feared military power. Lisa had been conducting similar reconnaissance missions throughout known space for the past 6 months, documenting the preparations for a galactic war that seemed increasingly inevitable. The Altarian energy monopolies were tightening their control over power distribution, using economic pressure to force compliance from systems that dared to develop alternative technologies. The Morgani trading networks were positioning themselves to profit from the coming conflict, secretly supplying weapons to both sides while maintaining their facade of neutral commercial interests. Ma'am, long-range sensors are detecting another fleet movement in the Andorian sector, Torres continued. Altarian heavy cruisers, at least 2 full battle groups. They're taking positions to support the Kepler advance, just as intelligence predicted. The pattern was becoming clear to anyone with access to comprehensive intelligence data. To galaxies. 3 major powers were coordinating their efforts to crush the growing independence movements before they could spread to other systems. The Kepler Federation would provide military force. The Altarians would control energy supplies to prevent enemy vessels from refueling, and the Morgani would manipulate supply lines to ensure that only their allies received necessary resources. Lisa activated her ship's advanced communication system, which used quantum entanglement principles derived from the ancient technology to transmit messages instantaneously across any distance without detection. Command, this is Phantom reporting. The enemy fleet deployment is proceeding exactly as Dr. Walsh's historical analysis predicted. Every major power is committing significant forces to this operation. The response came immediately from Admiral Stone's headquarters beneath Luna's surface. Confirmed, Phantom. We're seeing similar buildups in all major sectors. Intelligence. Estimates that 90% of the galaxy's military assets will be engaged within the next 72 hours. Are you prepared to begin Phase 2 of the reconnaissance mission? Phase 2 involved infiltrating the enemy command structures to document their strategic planning in detail. Lisa's ship could materialize inside any facility in the galaxy without triggering security systems, allowing her team to observe enemy leaders making the decisions that would determine the course of the coming war. More importantly, they could gather the intelligence needed to end that war as quickly as possible. Affirmative, Command. Beginning infiltration of Kepler Central Command now. The Phantom shifted through dimensional space, its hull becoming temporarily incorporeal as it passed through the massive walls of the enemy fortress. Lisa materialized her team in a maintenance corridor adjacent to the main strategic planning center, their presence undetectable to the sophisticated monitoring systems that protected the galaxy's most classified military secrets. Through microscopic surveillance devices, they observed their Kepler High Command finalizing their invasion plans. General Vorth, the Federation's supreme military leader, outlined a strategy of overwhelming force designed to crush resistance before it could spread to other systems. His battle plans called for the complete destruction of rebellious fleets, followed by planetary bombardments that would serve as examples to other systems considering independence. The Altarians will cut power to any system that refuses to surrender within the first 24 hours, Vorth explained to his subordinates. The Morgani have agreed to embargo all supply shipments to rebel territories. Once we demonstrate our ability to project force throughout the Outer Rim, the other systems will submit rather than face similar devastation. Lisa recorded every detail of the presentation while her team documented the defensive systems and command protocols that protected the facility. The information would be invaluable when human forces began their own operations. But more importantly, it confirmed that the galaxy's major powers viewed this conflict as a decisive moment that would establish their dominance for centuries to come. The next phase of reconnaissance took them to Altarian energy command centers, where they observed the preparation of economic warfare on a scale that would affect billions of civilians. The Altarians had developed the ability to remotely disable power generation systems throughout their sphere of influence, planning to use energy starvation as a weapon against any system that supported the rebels. The psychological impact will be as important as the practical effects, explained Energy Coordinator Sen to her staff. Once populations experience the loss of basic power services, they will pressure their governments to abandon any thoughts of independence. We estimate that most systems will capitulate within weeks of the embargo beginning. At Morgani Trading Headquarters, Lisa's team documented financial manipulations that would bankrupt entire star systems while generating massive profits for the trading cartels. The Morgani had spent months positioning their assets to benefit from the coming conflict, regardless of which side ultimately prevailed. Their calculations showed projected profits that would exceed the total economic output of most planetary systems. The pattern was clear and depressingly familiar. Dr. Walsh's analysis of the ancient databases had revealed similar conflicts throughout galactic history, each one following the same basic structure of major powers crushing emerging independence movements before they could threaten established hierarchies. The wars typically lasted decades, consumed enormous resources, and ended with the galaxy's population reduced and traumatized while the surviving powers divided the spoils among themselves. Command, this is Phantom with final reconnaissance. Report, Lisa transmitted after completing her survey of enemy preparations. All major powers are committed to this conflict. They're planning for total war with the expectation that it will establish their dominance permanently. Estimated timeline for hostilities to begin is less than 48 hours. Admiral Stone's response carried a tone of grim satisfaction. Confirmed, Phantom. All human forces are to return to base immediately. Operation Peacekeeper begins in 36 hours. The galaxy is about to learn that the balance of power has shifted permanently. Lisa guided her ship back through dimensional space toward human territory, where preparations for an entirely different kind of war were reaching completion. While the galaxy's major powers prepared to fight using strategies and weapons developed, over centuries of interstellar conflict, humanity was about to deploy capabilities that would make such CONVNTIO approaches utterly obsolete. The ancient technology had given them more than just advanced weapons and stealth capabilities. It had provided them with a comprehensive understanding of galactic history, revealing the cyclical nature of these conflicts and the precise methods needed to break the pattern permanently. Where other species saw an opportunity for conquest and profit, humans saw a chance to establish lasting peace through overwhelming demonstration of superior force. The invisible revolution was complete, and the galaxy was about to discover that the species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers had become the most formidable power in known space. The first shot of the Galactic War rang out at exactly 0847 Standard Time when Altarian energy cannons opened fire on the rebel fleet defending the Tau Centauri system. The massive beams of concentrated power tore through space with enough force to vaporize small moons, but they struck nothing but empty void where enemy ships had been moments before. The rebel vessels had simply vanished, leaving behind only scattered sensor echoes and the confused reports of targeting officers who couldn't explain what they had witnessed. Within minutes, similar engagements erupted across 12 different star systems as the carefully coordinated offensive began. Kepler Federation war fleets emerged from hyperspace to find their targets already gone, while Morgani supply convoys discovered that their cargo had mysteriously vanished from supposedly secure storage compartments. The galaxy's major powers had committed their most advanced military assets to a war against enemies who seemed to exist outside the normal rules of space and time. Admiral Stone watched the chaos unfold from her command center beneath Luna's surface, observing the real-time tactical displays that showed human forces materializing throughout the galaxy with surgical precision. The operation she had spent months planning was proceeding flawlessly, with each phase of the conquest unfolding exactly as their computer simulations had predicted. Phase 1 complete, reported Colonel Hayes from the Tactical Coordination Center. All enemy command vessels have been boarded successfully. Resistance has been minimal and enemy communications are being jammed according to protocol. The boarding operations represented the most audacious military action in galactic history. Human Marines had materialized simultaneously inside hundreds of enemy warships, appearing in engineering sections and command centers without triggering any security alarms. Their phase shift technology allowed them to bypass every defensive system the galaxy's military forces had developed, while their matter manipulation devices could disable enemy weapons by simply scrambling the molecular bonds that held their components together. Phase 2 initiating now, Hayes continued. Target acquisition teams are in position at all major government centers and military installations. Enemy leadership is being secured for transport to designated detention facilities. On the Altarian homeworld, President Kalen was conducting an emergency session of the Energy Council when human soldiers materialized around the conference table. The Altarian leaders sat in stunned silence as Marines in advanced combat armor politely but firmly explained that they were now prisoners of war, their government dissolved, and their energy monopolies terminated permanently. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as the leadership of every major power found themselves facing capture by soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere. The Kepler Federation's warrior culture had prepared them for many forms of combat, but not for enemies who could walk through walls and disable their weapons with devices that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different systems, reported Communications Director Park. Most of them haven't even been directly attacked yet, but word is spreading about what happened to the major fleet concentrations. The psychological impact of the human assault was proving as effective as its physical components. When entire battle fleets simply disappeared or found their weapon systems mysteriously inoperable, the news spread throughout the galaxy faster than the human forces themselves could move. Systems that had never seen a human warship were already calculating the futility of resistance against an enemy that possessed such overwhelming technological advantages. Lisa Chung led the assault on the Galactic Council chambers, materializing with her full company of Marines in the center of the Great Assembly Hall, where representatives of 12 species had gathered for an emergency session. The massive chamber fell silent as the council members realized that the species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers had somehow become the most formidable military force in known space. "Honored delegates," Lisa announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics. "By the authority of the human government and in the interest of galactic peace, I hereby inform you that your respective governments have been dissolved and your military forces have surrendered. You will be transported to Earth for negotiations regarding the establishment of a new galactic order." The Altarian Representative Council leader Vex attempted to activate his personal energy shield, only to discover that the device had somehow been reduced to inert components. "This is impossible," he declared, his blue skin paling to an almost white shade. "Our technology is centuries ahead of anything your species possesses. How are you doing this?" Lisa smiled with the confidence of someone who held advantages that her opponents couldn't even comprehend. "Your species developed energy manipulation through careful study and gradual advancement over thousands of years. We learned it in 3 months through practical experimentation with technology you couldn't understand if we gave you detailed blueprints." The Kepler Federation's military representative, General Kor, remained standing despite the obvious futility of resistance. His warrior instincts demanded that he fight even against impossible odds, but his tactical training recognized when a battle was already lost. "What are your terms for surrender?" "Unconditional," Lisa replied. "All military forces will be disarmed and reorganized under human command. All existing government structures will be dissolved and replaced with administrations answerable to Earth. All advanced weapons technology will be surrendered for analysis and potential destruction." The Morgani Trade Coordinator Financial Director Voss was already calculating the economic implications of the new situation. "What guarantees do we have regarding property rights and existing commercial agreements?" "None," Lisa answered bluntly. "The old order is finished. Whatever emerges from these negotiations will be based on human principles of cooperation and mutual benefit rather than the exploitation and warfare that have characterized galactic civilization for millennia." The conquest had taken exactly 6 weeks from the first shot to the final surrender, making it the shortest major war in galactic history. More remarkably, it had been accomplished with virtually no casualties on either side. Human forces had simply disabled enemy equipment and captured enemy personnel without causing the massive destruction that typically accompanied such conflicts. "Ma'am, final casualty reports are coming in," reported Colonel Hayes. "Total deaths across all theaters of operation, 0. Total injuries requiring medical treatment, 47, mostly minor accidents during transport operations. Enemy equipment disabled or captured, approximately 98% of all major military assets." Admiral Stone nodded with satisfaction. The ancient technology had made it possible to wage war in a way that previous generations of military leaders could never have imagined. Instead of destroying their enemies, they had simply made resistance impossible while preserving the infrastructure and personnel needed to build a better galactic civilization. "Begin Phase 3 immediately," she ordered. "All captured leadership personnel are to be transported to Earth for the peace conference. I want temporary governments established in every major system within 72 hours, staffed initially by human administrators but with provisions for local participation as populations adapt to the new order." The galaxy's major powers had expected a war that would last decades and consume billions of lives. Instead, they had witnessed a demonstration of power so overwhelming that continued resistance was clearly pointless. The species they had underestimated had proven that superior technology and strategic thinking could accomplish more in weeks than traditional warfare had achieved in centuries. As news of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy, populations that had lived under the threat of constant warfare for millennia began to contemplate the possibility of lasting peace. The cycle of conquest and rebellion that had defined galactic civilization was ending, replaced by a new order based on principles that most species had never experienced but were eager to explore. President Maria Santos walked through the halls of the rebuilt United Nations headquarters, her footsteps echoing off marble floors that had witnessed humanity's first stumbling attempts at global governance centuries ago. Today, these same chambers would host negotiations that would determine the structure of galactic civilization for generations to come. The irony wasn't lost on her that the species once considered too primitive for meaningful participation in galactic affairs was now dictating terms to powers that had ruled the stars for millennia. The Great Assembly Hall had been modified to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, each delegation seated according to protocols that emphasized cooperation rather than the hierarchical arrangements that had characterized the old Galactic Council. Former Energy Coordinator Sen of the Altarians sat beside ex-General Kor of the Kepler Federation, while Morgani financial leaders found themselves sharing tables with representatives from systems they had once economically dominated. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," Santos began, her voice carrying through translation systems that rendered her words into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We gathered today not as conquerors and conquered, but as participants in the birth of a new form of galactic civilization. The old order, based on competition, exploitation, and endless warfare, has proven unsustainable. We offer something better." The transformation had already begun throughout human-controlled space, which now encompassed virtually every inhabited system in the galaxy. Former Altarian energy monopolies had been broken up and democratized, with clean power generation technology made freely available to every world regardless of their political alignment or economic status. Kepler military installations had been converted into exploration bases and defensive outposts, their warrior crews retrained as protectors of trade routes and explorers of uncharted regions. "The human proposal is ambitious beyond precedent," admitted former council leader Vex, his blue skin showing the stress markings that indicated his species' equivalent of exhaustion. "You're suggesting the complete restructuring of galactic civilization, the abandonment of systems that have maintained stability for thousands of years?" Santos smiled with the patience of someone who had spent months preparing for exactly these objections. "Stability built on oppression isn't stable at all, as recent events have demonstrated. Your systems maintained order through the threat of violence and economic coercion. We offer genuine stability through cooperation and shared prosperity." Dr. Emma Walsh had been appointed as the human representative for technological integration, responsible for overseeing the controlled distribution of the ancient technology that had made human dominance possible. Her research teams had spent the past year developing applications that would benefit all species while preventing the kind of weapons development that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. "The technology will be made available to all member systems," Walsh explained to the assembled delegates. "However, its use will be regulated through international oversight committees with representatives from every major species. We've learned from galactic history that unrestricted access to advanced technology inevitably leads to warfare and destruction." The Morgani delegation, led by former financial director Voss, had been particularly interested in the economic implications of the new order. Their entire civilization was built around trade networks and profit maximization, concepts that seemed threatened by human emphasis on cooperation and resource sharing. "What incentives exist for innovation and economic development under this proposed system?" Voss asked, his mechanical voice translator struggling to convey the subtle tones that indicated Morgani concern. "Our species has thrived through competition and the pursuit of profitable opportunities." Admiral Stone, who had been appointed as the first commander of the new Galactic Defense Force, addressed the question with the practical perspective of someone who had witnessed the destructive results of unchecked competition. "Competition will continue, but it will be channeled toward productive purposes rather than destructive ones. Instead of competing to develop better weapons, species will compete to develop better technologies for exploration, environmental restoration, and quality of life improvements. The new military structure represented a radical departure from traditional galactic defense arrangements. Instead of each species maintaining separate military forces that inevitably came into conflict with each other, the Galactic Defense Force would be integrated, with personnel from all member species serving together under unified command structures. Our preliminary assessment suggests that this arrangement could reduce military expenditures by 70%, while actually improving overall security, reported Colonel Hayes, who had been tasked with overseeing the integration process. When all species work together instead of against each other, the resources required for defense decreased dramatically. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks, with each major issue requiring careful discussion and compromise among species that had been enemies just months before. The humans maintained their position as final arbiters of disputed points, but they encouraged maximum participation from all delegates in developing the specific mechanisms of the new government. The most significant challenge will be cultural adaptation, observed Dr. Walsh during one of the working sessions on educational reform. Many species have social structures built around concepts of dominance and submission that won't easily adapt to cooperative frameworks. We need comprehensive programs to help populations understand and embrace the new approaches. The Kepler delegation, led by former General Corps, had struggled most with the transition. Their entire cultural identity was built around martial prowess and hierarchical command structures that seemed incompatible with human emphasis on consensus and cooperation. "My people are warriors," Corps explained during a private consultation with President Santos. "We define ourselves through combat and conquest. What role can we play in a galaxy dedicated to peace?" Santos had anticipated this concern and had prepared a response that addressed the Kepler need for purpose while channeling their aggressive tendencies toward constructive goals. "Warriors are exactly what we need, General, but warriors dedicated to protecting rather than conquering. The galaxy is vast and largely unexplored. We need brave souls willing to venture into unknown regions, to face whatever dangers might threaten peaceful civilizations." The final agreements established a federal structure with Earth as the capital world and humans holding ultimate executive authority, but with extensive autonomy for individual systems and significant representation for all species in the legislative and judicial branches. The new government would be called the Galactic Federation, and its primary mission would be the maintenance of peace through strength and the promotion of prosperity through cooperation. Alex Reed, the captain who had first discovered the ancient technology, was appointed as the head of the new exploration service, responsible for mapping uncharted regions and making contact with previously unknown civilizations. His first mission would be to follow the star charts found in the ancient databases, seeking other remnants of the vanished civilization that had made human dominance possible. "We estimate that less than 30% of the galaxy has been properly explored," Reed explained to the assembled delegates during the closing ceremonies. "There may be dozens of other species out there, possibly including remnants of the civilization that created the technology we've been studying. Our new mission is to find them and welcome them into the galactic community as equals." The transformation was already visible throughout human space, with former enemy species working alongside human administrators to rebuild their societies according to principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. Trade networks that had once existed solely to generate profits for Morgani cartels were being restructured to ensure fair distribution of resources to all member systems. Altarian energy technologies were being taught to species that had been deliberately kept dependent on imported power for centuries. "The results exceed our most optimistic projections," reported Economic Coordinator Bradley during the final week of negotiations. "Systems that were economically stagnant under the old regime are showing unprecedented growth rates. When populations don't have to dedicate enormous resources to military defense and can access advanced technologies freely, their productive capacity increases exponentially." The psychological impact of the changes was equally dramatic. Populations that had lived under the constant threat of warfare for millennia were experiencing peace for the first time in their recorded history. Children were being born into a galaxy where their primary concerns would be education and personal development rather than survival and military service. Former financial director Voss had initially resisted the economic restructuring, but even he was forced to acknowledge the superior results of the cooperative approach. "I admit that our projections were flawed," he conceded during one of the final sessions. "We calculated maximum profit extraction from existing resources, but we failed to account for the economic growth that occurs when all participants benefit from increased productivity." The Galactic Institute of Sciences, established under Dr. Walsh's direction, had become the fastest-growing institution in the new government. Scientists from dozens of species were working together to unlock the remaining secrets of the ancient technology, while developing new applications that would benefit all member civilizations. "We've barely scratched the surface of what this technology can accomplish," Walsh explained to President Santos during a private briefing. "The databases suggest that the original civilization used it not just for matter manipulation and energy generation, but for consciousness transfer, time manipulation, and even communication with parallel dimensions. The possibilities are literally unlimited." The military integration had proceeded more smoothly than anyone had anticipated. Former enemies found themselves serving together in exploration fleets and defense installations, their combined expertise creating capabilities that no single species could have achieved independently. The warrior ethos of the Kepler Federation proved surprisingly compatible with the protective mission of the new defense force, while Altarian technical expertise and Morgani logistical abilities filled critical gaps in human organizational capabilities. "It's remarkable how naturally different species can work together when they're not competing for resources or territory," observed Admiral Stone during a review of the integration process. Most of the conflicts that seemed insurmountable were actually artificial constructions created by the old competitive system. The closing ceremony took place in the same assembly hall where humanity had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Now, representatives from dozens of species stood together as they formally ratified the charter that would govern their shared future. "Today marks the end of an era characterized by warfare, exploitation, and waste," President Santos declared, as she signed the final documents. "It also marks the beginning of an age of exploration, cooperation, and unprecedented prosperity. We have proven that different species can work together for mutual benefit rather than fighting over limited resources." The ancient technology had given humanity the power to dominate the galaxy through force, but their true achievement lay in choosing to use that power to create something better than what had existed before. Instead of becoming another conquering empire that would eventually collapse under the weight of its own oppression, humans had established a system designed to grow stronger through diversity and cooperation. "The galaxy is vast and full of wonders we haven't even imagined yet," Captain Reed announced as he prepared to depart on the first official exploration mission of the new government. "Our ancestors looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. Today, their descendants look beyond the stars and dream of touching the infinite." The transformation was complete, but it was also just beginning. Humanity had brought the galaxy to its knees not through brutality or oppression, but by demonstrating that there was a better way forward and having the strength to enforce that vision until others could see its wisdom. The species that had once been dismissed as too primitive for meaningful participation in galactic affairs had become the architects of a new form of civilization that would reshape the cosmos itself. As the delegates departed to return to their homeworlds and begin implementing the new order, they carried with them the knowledge that the endless cycles of warfare and destruction that had defined galactic history were finally ending. In their place, a new chapter was beginning, one written by a species that understood cooperation, valued diversity, and possessed the technological might to ensure that their vision of peaceful prosperity would endure for generations to come.